Now, of course, we're all concerned about some instability in Botswana now, but hopefully they will carry on the path that they have been on, which has created such magnificent improvements for the lives of their people, improvements that could be shared all across Africa with the adoption of the right policies that give people control over their own economic lives.
Welcome to another IATP Explainer. This week we are joined by Fred McMahon. Fred is a resident fellow at the Fraser Institute and the holder of the Dr. Michael A. Walker Chair in Economic Freedom. He manages the Economic Freedom of the World Project and coordinates the Economic Freedom Network. Fred has also written several books and dozens of articles focusing on development, trade, governance, and economic structure. What is economic freedom, and how does it relate to economic development?
Economic freedom is simply the ability of individuals and families to make their own economic decisions, free of coercion or force from crony elites or overpowerful government. It is essential to development. Individuals and families are simply the ingenuity and drive of individuals and families is simply so much more powerful than the corrupt crony elites which run most countries that don't have economic freedom. Not only are the crony elites less competent than you or I or your family are in making your own economic decisions, but they are typically tremendously corrupt. And you don't have to take my word for it. All you have to do is look around the world. This is someone everybody knows but may not have formulated. When you look around the world, the countries that have the highest levels of prosperity, the highest levels of education, the longest lives, the best health care, all these countries have high levels of economic freedom. The countries where poverty, violence, and other social problems are rife are all countries that don't have economic freedom. So not only is it borne out conceptually, which is easy to understand, but it's also borne out simply by looking around the world.
How does the Fraser Institute measure economic freedom?
We look at five areas that affect economic freedom. Size of government. If government is too big, squeezes up space for free exchange, it limits your economic freedom. Sound money. Government can tax your property way through inflation every bit as easily as through taxation. Free trade. You need to be able to buy and sell from anybody in your country and from anybody in the world. And this is hugely important for Africa, which is made up of so many poor nations that need the world as their marketplace to grow rich. We look at regulation. The optimal level of regulation is not zero, but too often regulations tie businesses, workers up in unnecessary red tape, and it also in many places becomes an excuse for corruption. The regulations are tough, they take a long time. Somebody says, well, I can help you get through these things, just give me a little bit of a tip to do so. And finally, and by far most importantly, is the rule of law, which is necessary to protect the economic freedom of all. Without a firm and impartial rule of law, the rich and the powerful will reduce or eliminate the economic freedom of everyone else so they can make themselves richer and happier while the rest of the country gets poorer and more unhappy.
Has Africa become more economically free over the last few decades?
Yes, Africa has become more economically free over the last few decades, but it's not been a steep climb. It's been a gradual increase. It still has a very significant gap with the average economic freedom of the world. In fact, the world's economic freedom on average has grown over that over that period, and which means that though Africa has grown on average, it hasn't caught up that much. And tremendous improvements are needed to turn Africa into a prosperous continent. By the way, you and I and many others work with just astonishing think tanks in Africa, working hard and bravely, sometimes in dangerous conditions, to improve the lives of their fellow citizens by increasing economic freedom for everyone in their nation.
Are there any measures of economic freedom where sub-Saharan African nations consistently score low? Or are such generalizations not possible?
Generalizations are always difficult, but in Africa, this one holds. With maybe one or two exceptions, the rule of law, the most important area of economic freedom, is weak across Africa. And that is the central challenge to reformers, the central challenge to improving the lives of people. Governments, for instance, have pretty good control over their fiscal situation. So the government can say on Tuesday that it's going to cut a tax rate Wednesday morning, and Wednesday morning the tax rate is cut. If a government says Tuesday afternoon that by Wednesday morning all the police officers, all the judges, and all the military officers are going to be honest by Wednesday morning at 11 a.m., it's not going to happen. It's a long and hard process, and this is the deepest challenge now facing most African nations.
Why are you optimistic about Africa's future?
I'm optimistic because economic freedom has grown in Africa, perhaps not as much as we would like. The African Trade Agreement is a tremendous step forward, which could help immensely. I know it's been a lot in the news about some backstepping with some African nations, but that is inevitable. 2 steps forward and 1 step back is a whole bunch better than no steps forward. And finally, just let me point out one area both of hope and concern. Botswana, for a long time, has been at the top of economic freedom in sub-Saharan Africa, and its growth has been astonishing. It's gone from an income below the average African income to one that is several times higher than the average African income. In fact, since 1960, the growth, the per capita income in Botswana has grown by 20 times, a factor of 20. So a person living in Botswana today is 20 times more prosperous than they were in 1960. In the rest of Africa, where economic freedom has been low, the overall growth since 1960 is just a few percentage points. This helps clarify the almost miraculous improvement in the human condition that economic freedom can creates. Now, of course, we're all concerned about some instability in Botswana now, but hopefully they will carry on the path that they have been on, which has created such magnificent improvements for the lives of their people, improvements that could be shared all across Africa with the adoption of the right policies that give people control over their own economic lives.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this video, you may find some of our other work interesting. Check out another video here. Also, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button below, leave a comment, and follow the IATP on Twitter at @the_IATP.